I appreciate so much, like the more conversations, the more podcasts and more real conversations I have with people like you, right? And like sharing like how therapy it wasn't helpful for me, right?
Right.
And I always throw the number, like I finished that world with 8 because science and data matter to me, right? So if I like only had one therapist, that's not that's not fair, right? For me, like, oh, it didn't work for me. I
Right.
had one. Well, I had 8. Like, we had a variety here, right? Like,
Yeah.
a pretty good test sample at this point. Um,
Yeah.
but what I was saying is like the more conversations I have with people, the more people are being honest with like, you know what? Like, I agree. I tried therapy and it wasn't helpful for me. Or, I had to go through a lot of like terrible therapists, but then I found one and that one really made a difference in my life. Because these conversations, I had never heard them. All I'd ever heard was like, yeah, you go to therapy and it's just like life changing, right? And so here
Yeah.
I am going from one to another and like not getting better. And like all that does was tell me, like, you are so broken, you cannot be helped. And this is your fault, right? And I think
Right.
the
Which
more
is
we have these discussions, the more empowering it is for people to be like, okay, that therapist wasn't helpful for me. And there are terrible therapists, and I can keep trying other ones, or there are other modalities out there that I can find the help I need. But this isn't me, and I'm too broken or something wrong with me. It's just, I haven't found the right fit. And I think these are
right.
super valuable conversations to be having for people.
Same with doctors.
Oh, yeah.
I'll throw
Yeah.
that in there too. Uh, Doctors too. Like there's more than one doctor in the world. You don't have to
Yes.
just go to one doctor. It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker. Yo, man. Boom, Miss Rusty. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Public Access Podcast, the podcast here on the Rusty Diamond Podcast Network. It is September 24th, 2024. And if you want to watch this show, you can watch it on YouTube or Rumble. Or if you want to listen to it, you can listen to it anywhere you get podcasts, except for your weird, obscure podcast player. It may not be on there, but you know what? Maybe it is. So thank you everybody for being here. And today, my special guest is right here and right now. And my special guest right here and right now is Kimberly Jarman. Cool special effects. What was early 2020 like for you?
Early 2020.
Early 2020 when stuff shut down.
Yeah. So at that time I had sold in 2018, I had sold my CrossFit gym, which was like the dream job, right?
Yep.
And I was kind of lost, like, okay, I've done my dream job. I can't go back into higher ed, which was not the dream job. What am I
You say
supposed to do?
hiring? I'm sorry.
Higher ed. I was in higher
Oh,
ed
higher ed.
before, and that was like not Kim. Um, so I was like, what am I supposed to do? I'm 30. How old was I? I was 30 something years old. So in 2020, then I was just doing like a part-time energy efficiency audit gig where I would just go to homes and do energy efficiency audits. And then COVID happened and I couldn't go into people's homes to audit, right? And so I was like, okay, what am I gonna do with my life? And had started doing life coaching at that point for me, for my life. And it was like life changing. And so I kind of really like dug into more of that and I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. So in October 2020, I launched my coaching business.
Good time to do it.
Yeah.
So, how long did that take to get from I can't go into anyone's houses to I'm gonna start your online coaching business?
What COVID really sh in the States shut us down, what, in March, basically?
Something like that.
Yeah. I was just kind of like, so I worked for a guy, so I was just kind of like hanging out, and he was like, I'll just pay you by the hour. Like, I don't know, like, I can't send you into houses, so I'll just kind of pay you by the hour. And so I was just doing my thing. So that was March. And then October, I launched my coaching business and picked up my first client then. So it was kind of that window. I still did audits though for a whole, like we got to start auditing again towards the end of that year.
Okay. Where were you?
So I live in Oklahoma.
In Oklahoma. Okay. So what the shutdown was it like I don't know, was it like a lot of masks and stuff by where you were? Did that kind of wear off fast, or was it
Um, it was kind of like, yeah, there was a lot at first. And also, like, we're part of that, like, you can't tell us what to do type people. So there are some of us that were like, no, I'm not doing that.
right?
Um, I was already an entrepreneur before, so I was already used to like being by myself, right? So it wasn't like devastating to my nervous system, like, oh no, I'm gonna be at home and I'm such a people person. I was like, yeah, I'm used to being an entrepreneur and doing my things on solo. Like, this is life for entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Were you like having a time where it was did it like all of a sudden come to you, or was it that you wanted to have this business, or was it I don't know, ChatGPT wasn't around quite yet then,
Yeah.
so what how'd that happen?
So really it wasn't the pandemic. Like COVID, because I came out of the health and fitness industry, right? And I
Yeah,
had a very strong belief in my body's immune system, right? I understood the immune system. I knew how it worked. So for me, COVID was like, yeah, this is just another virus. My immune system will like handle this and we will move on, right? Like that was my philosophy.
sure.
Um, I was healthy too, right? Like I was a CrossFit athlete, was healthy. Um, so in terms of your question of my business, though, that was like not even a COVID thing. That was like Kim struggled for years since I was 13 years old with depression on and off and suicide ideation on and off. And then we hit 2013. I was in a toxic marriage, and there was widespread flooding. And so we lost everything in a flood. And the one coping mechanism, I had two coping mechanisms at that time,
Okay.
religion and CrossFit. And so when
Okay.
the flood hit and we were like going home to get like our toothbrushes, right? And it was in lockdown to keep from looting. And so we're walking through this hip deep water and you can't see anything. And like there's animals floating. And I, it was just a moment of where one of my religion coping mechanisms couldn't work anymore. Like the trauma stacked on top of all of my childhood trauma was just too great at that point. So I let go like of that coping mechanism. And when you have trauma and you don't have a coping mechanism, PTSD is going to quickly follow. So
Sure.
2013, I started spinning at that point with PTSD. And so previous depression, previous trauma, previous suicide ideation, no coping mechanism is now completely in the forefront. And keep in mind, like I have a master's degree in counseling, and I had already been to six therapists over like 8 years, right? So it was like I was doing the work. I was
Right.
going to therapy, I was doing the work. And then this event happens, and like I just spun and like
Yeah.
PTSD. Um, and then we hit 2016. I left my husband, moved from Colorado back to my home state of Oklahoma, and another event happened, and I found myself in January of 2016 in the psych hospital for suicide. And when I left the psych hospital, I realized two things. One, I wasn't as depressed as I thought I was. And two, no one was coming to save me. No one. No God, no person. Like if I wanted a different life, that was fully on Kim, and it was Kim's responsibility to change her life. So that was January 2016. Um, so then I kind of went on a journey. Then I went after my dream job of owning a CrossFit gym. Then I sold it, and it was like building this like I have if I have my happiness is my responsibility and like I have to like create a life that I love because the alternative is too painful, right?
Right.
Um, and so then I was reading a book that said, if you want to be successful, because that's what it was like. I just want to be successful. I'm tired of living paycheck to paycheck. I'm tired of constantly being disappointed. I'm tired of just like knowing that I'm meant for more and like doing these just like jobs that like are not fulfilling. Um, and so in the book, it was like, if you want to be successful, you got to get a coach. And so that's when I like Googled it and I found life coaching, the life coach school, and it was life changing for me. I was like, oh my gosh, like my thoughts create my emotions, and my emotions drive my actions, and my actions create the results in my life. And if I want different results, I just have to have different thoughts. Like I had never heard of that, Rusty. Nowhere from my therapist, nowhere in undergrad and graduate school and counseling. No one had ever taught me that. And it was like,
Wow.
these are the keys to the universe. Like these emotions are just from my thoughts. That's it, not from the other people. So I was 20, what, 18? No, 2019 is when I started getting coaching for myself. So that's why I launched my business. It wasn't because of the pandemic. It was because it was so life-changing for me. It was the first time in my life that I felt empowered and in control of my life and in control of my future.
And so, I mean, how did it start out? How did your coaching start out? Did you have to write a program or a book, or you just say, "Hey, I'm doing life coaching. Let's get going. Sign
Yeah.
up."
Yeah. I'm a pretty good networker. So like I'd already had built a network, you know? And so
Yeah.
I launched my business. So I would go to networking events or I would reach out and direct message like some of my people that I had met networking, like, hey, I started my life coaching business, or I would go to like essential oil parties, you know, like those MLM parties.
Oh, sure.
I
Yeah.
would
Yep.
I would go to them and I would network in them and like I would just talk to people and like, what's going on in your life? And like, oh, I hate my job. And I'm like, oh, I can totally help you with that. Like,
Was that in Colorado?
no, it's in Oklahoma. Yeah.
Oh, they okay. They got that going
Yeah.
out there too. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and then I launched my beta program. And so in my beta program, because my coaching program is very different than most people's.
how so?
My business partner is a licensed naturopathic doctor. So she's my best friend and she's my business partner. And what I found on my personal journey was like, yeah, we're like in therapy, we're talking about these things, but I'm like still walking away with the same shitty thought loops, right? Like I'm still thinking the same shitty thoughts, which is creating results. And also, her and I were doing a podcast because we have a podcast too, episode, and I was obsessed with Elon. And I was like, what makes him so different from the rest of us? And she so casually goes, oh, well, that's serotonin. That's a self-confidence chemical. Like when it's balanced, it's easy for us to feel very self-confident and have rejection resilience. But when it's not balanced, rejection is devastating. And that's what I felt a lot when I owned my CrossFit gym. Like when people would quit, it felt devastating. And I was like, this is the key we're missing. Like, if we can start testing, because I work with women only, if we can start testing like their neurotransmitters, like serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, test their hormones, test their cortisol, and we can kind of like biohack that to optimize those, and we can work on their thoughts, like game on, you can create any life that you want at that point, right? Because we don't have those
Yeah.
things holding you back anymore. So when people come into my program, we send them a kit and we test their neurotransmitters and their hormones and their cortisol levels. So when I launched my coaching program, I had a beta and I was like, hey, I will coach you for 6 weeks for free. You have to pay for the lab, but I'll coach you for 6 weeks for free. And we're going to see what kind of results we can create.
Right.
And so that was a little bit easier than to start filling my practice because I mean, who doesn't want to do that? So I
Right.
loaded it up with 8 women and then, yeah, went from there.
So why are you working with women only?
Because I have coached men before. And no offense, but
Uh,
men are socially conditioned that emotions don't matter. So I'm over here trying to say, like, okay, your thoughts are creating your emotions, and your emotions are driving your actions, right? So
Right.
what emotion are we feeling that's driving these actions? And they're like, not really feeling anything.
Right. And I mean, that hasn't really been addressed in any therapy. I saw a video of someone say that yesterday, and I was just like, that's true. I mean, because yeah, a lot of therapy is built upon that, upon, like you did it for these feelings, but it's like, no, it's just that's just how it is. Like there wasn't that. Like, why is this in anything? So yeah, okay, I mean that makes sense. And so um okay. And so then you decided to get on that train and then um so do you do like the marketing and everything then, or is that her thing, or you both do
So we
it,
have two
or
separate businesses, right? She has her
oh,
practice, her
okay.
medical practice, and I have my coaching business. And then we partner up at the beginning of when clients come in for me to test and then do an evaluation of their test. Yeah, so I'm a solopreneur. I am the end all be all of every aspect of my business.
Yeah. Okay. Well then so next question. What were you doing during 9/11 as a weird way to like with going with 2020 and then you're going with 2001 curiosity. It's like one of
Yeah.
those, yeah, like what were you doing, like, like I don't know. I figure I don't know if people ask that question anymore since it's been kind of a long time now.
Yeah. So 9/11, I was a sophomore in college. And I remember I was in between classes. So I got to my next class and they had it all over the TVs, right? It was going on. To be honest, like to think about that version of me, um, I don't think I really fully understood like the enormity of it, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm from Oklahoma. So we have to remember, we have to put that in context, right? So we have to go back to the Oklahoma bombing, which was in the
Oh,
90s.
95 or something.
Yeah. So this was like I
Okay.
experienced that as a teenager. And like that one was a little bit more big deal because it's my home state. My uncle
Uh,
worked in that building, right? So it was almost like, yeah, this is what happens.
yeah. Okay. Wow. So were you in college in Oklahoma then too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What uh what were you doing college for? What was your college? Did
My
you
college journey.
was that anything that like now makes any sense, or
Yeah.
was it
Yeah. It's such a funny like how our lives like take these like loop. Like are you a hiker?
no, I walk in the woods, but I don't spend time overnight.
Okay. But like when you walk in the woods, like a lot of us do switchbacks, right? Like we don't go just
Sure.
straight up the mountain. We like do switchbacks. Like it's funny how like that is life as well. So when I went to college, like the dream was I am going to become a state championship girls basketball coach. Like that's all I cared about. I just want to be a girls basketball coach. I want to teach, back then they called it home ec. Um,
Okay, yeah.
I
What do
want
they
to teach
call it
home
now?
ec. I think they call it like consumer sciences or something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, I want to teach home ec because I struggle. Like I didn't, I'm academically I'm good academically, but I had a
Yeah.
lot of trauma, right? So trauma kind of overlaps everything. So in high school, like my home ec teachers were like my safe space where I could feel seen. So that's what like I think impacted me. And I go to college and they're like, no, you can't do both of those. You have to choose one. I was like,
Oh, that
okay, well, I want to coach basketball then. So I majored in I think English, and I was like, yeah, this is not for me. And I did 2 years of education. We had to do student evaluation, go to college schools and evaluate classrooms. I was like, I do not want to do this.
good to know.
Yeah, I just wanted to coach basketball. So I switched majors to exercise science. And then also I double majored in counseling.
Okay.
Yeah. So my bachelor's degree was in counseling, exercise science, and then I had to go to grad school because you can't do anything with either one of those bachelor's degrees. And so I got my master's degree in counseling then. So
Oh,
yeah, so they both have like because my business right now is integrating both the mind and the body. So
do you ever get into coaching basketball?
I would love to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do do you still follow it or
Oh
do
yeah.
you
Caitlin Clark,
okay.
hands down the best basketball player ever. Men, women, I don't care.
Yeah. So do you get to go to games? Is there
Yeah, we have a
or
professional team here, the Thunder. So we go to the
okay.
Thunder games. Yeah.
Um and then so I mean how would that work? Like if you were to say I wanted to start coaching now in addition, how would that what would you do? Like if you said
Yeah.
you today you think, "Hey, I want to be a coach." A basketball coach, what would you do? What would be your first few steps in that?
I love that you asked me that question because I can see how different my brain is now because I've been an entrepreneur so long. So I think like an entrepreneur, which I'm so proud of because that was a hard
Yeah,
transition from employee mindset to how I would do it now is I would pitch myself to high schools, I would identify a couple high schools I would want to be at, and I would pitch myself as a consultant for the mental performance side for all of their athletes and their whole athletic department. So they could pay me as a contractor and then they could stipend me as an assistant girls basketball coach. That's how I would do it.
yeah. Um, what would what would get you to do that?
Uh, that they would have to pay me more than I do in my own coaching business. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I'm
Um,
sacrificing, right? Like right now, I get to make my own schedule. I'm
that's true.
sacrificing that to consult with them and to be on their schedule. So they're going to have to be willing to pay me more than what I can make.
Right. So
Yeah.
what's your schedule like? Is not the basketball probably afternoon, evening uh time?
No, I work, um, I'm off on Mondays to play with my nephew. He's 3. And
Okay.
then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Fridays, I work 11 to 6. And then Thursdays are at my admin day. So I just do administrative stuff on Thursdays
Okay. And you said Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, you said?
or coaching days. Yeah.
Okay. And then the weekends you just
Or Kim's.
nothing?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the weekend usually do?
Um,
Or are you thinking about work or are you do you leave
no,
that or
no. Weekends are Kim's. So that's just Kim time. So I hang out with my husband. We go do fun stuff. We hike. We have dirt bikes. My husband loves to go to drag races or car shows or yeah, something fun, adventurous.
okay. Um, all right. I don't know if so I guess I'll go back to uh the Oklahoma bombing. Like what was going on? Like how where did that what was going on with that when you were I mean yeah, you would have been probably
I
what,
can't
middle
remember if that
school.
happened in 95.
I want to say 95. I could be wrong.
Yeah, so I would have been in junior high at that time. Um,
Okay.
I think it happened in the morning. For like that was like basically pre-internet, right? Or
Yeah,
we didn't have internet in Oklahoma small town junior high. So
yeah,
um
95. And that was like,
yeah.
yeah, like maybe have computers that would maybe start getting online about, yeah, I feel it was sometime like, 'cause, yeah, I was in middle school, like 95 to 97. And I think somewhere in there was when we started having internet access at the library.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so somewhere in
Dial
there.
up.
So yeah, it could
Yeah.
have been pre-internet very easily.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
And
think we didn't have internet. So I don't remember them talking about it at school. I think it was more like you got home or something, and then it was on the news. And I remember my mom was really like worried and upset because my uncle, her brother, had worked in the building because it was a federal building.
yeah,
Yeah. And what's crazy about it is like Timothy McVeigh, who was the bomber, right?
right.
Like he randomly picked Oklahoma, is what all I can tell. Because like he wasn't even from here. Like, I don't know how he ended up picking our federal building in Oklahoma. Like, yeah.
Good
Um,
point.
yeah. So I remember my mom was like worried and upset. And like it was like weeks, right? Because you had, there was a daycare at the bottom, right?
Whoa.
And they
Yeah.
like 9/11, at least the planes hit the top of the buildings, which gave the rescuers time to at least get the children out, right? Because they were on
Yeah.
the bottom floor. Well, there was no warning. He just parked in front of the building and then the van exploded. And so there was like so many children because they were on the bottom floor. And yeah, and it was just days and days of like it being on the news and like all these parents and all these kids that were at school and their parents were in it. Like it was devastating to Oklahoma.
And so how do you process that at that time?
That's a great question. Um, I know I'm not sure that I did, honestly, Rusty, because like I didn't I didn't grow up in a home where like we were taught two emotions. You were either chill or you were either angry. And so I had to learn as a kid to like filter all my emotions through those two things. Right? Because I didn't have the skill set to deal with shame. I didn't have the skill set to deal with grief. Right? It's just like those were the two. Um, and there was no like talking or conversation. And back then, mental health wasn't like that big a deal, right? So it's
Right.
not like they sent like counselors to our schools to talk to us about it. It was just like, this is life, and you just move on. So I probably just like pushed, like I just stored it in my body, like, okay, like the world is an unsafe place. I'm not safe in this world. Yeah.
And so then like when did you start getting into counseling and uh for yourself and
Yeah.
starting to work through?
This is funny. So I uh I was 23 when I went to grad school. And our first in grad week, grad school, our first week in grad school, my professor looked at us and he was like, I want you guys to look around because all of you are here because you need therapy. You think you want to help people, it's because you need therapy. And I am this 23-year-old, like fairly confident girl. And I'm looking around, I'm like, yeah, that lady for sure. I'm good. Um, and so then they ask us, like, you guys all need to go find a therapist because you need to experience counseling from the client's perspective before you become one, right? And
Right.
so because I'm a good student, I was like, okay, I'll go find me a counselor. Um, and I found one. And I think that was why I started going to therapy, is because that was what was expected out of us. And that's what I was supposed to do. Right.
Right.
And then as I got older and more, I kept stacking trauma on top of trauma. Uh, and then I'm in therapy, right? And they're wanting to like, this is what drives me kind of crazy about it, is I had sexual assault from like junior high and high school trauma. And like
Yeah.
that's always what they wanted to key in on. Like I'd go to therapy and like, we're just gonna talk about that. And it was like, I, that was never my root cause trauma,
There
right?
was
Like
something
that.
before it.
Yeah, it was like, um, emotional and verbal trauma
Sure.
from my nuclear family, right? Uh, and so the sexual trauma was just like, whatever. Like I had learned how to dissociate from it. So it was just so infuriating to me. Like, why are we talking about this again? Like, I am fine. Like, why are we talking about this? And it wasn't until later on I realized, like, yeah, it's because we never got to the root cause. Like, we never talked about really what the core wounds were. It was that I just was not emotionally supported or seen as a child.
And what was that breakthrough like?
Um, Lots of grief. Yeah.
And then was it process then to work through that and to get to,
Yeah, I mean, I think I still like, even though I have so many to like, I'm a neuroscience based coach, so I focus on the brain and right, like, and then the body and like what creates human behaviors. And I think because I had so many years of therapy, that I kind of created this wall of like, look, like, I'm fine. I've gone to therapy. Like, I just never wanted to be a victim. I had spent so many years being programmed and as a victim, I never wanted to identify, and I hated the like title of "you're a survivor." Like, no, like I'm just a human. These things have happened, and we're moving on, right? So I would never really like look at the childhood trauma. And then I found in my business, my coaching business, I kept hitting like a ceiling, like where I would like self-sabotage because I was like, it was hitting on these like very internal core fears that I could not put a finger on. It was just like, it was like almost like fear of success, fear of being seen, right? And so I would self-sabotage and keep my business at a certain limit. And then I finally realized I had a coach friend that was watching me get coached, and she interrupted and was like, can't you see? Like, she cannot see this because she has like these core level trauma things going on. So then that forced me that I had to start looking at my trauma. So last year is where I really started digging in and like looking at my childhood trauma and being willing to like acknowledge it and start doing that inner child work to heal it. And I honestly think, Rusty, this is going to be I don't want to say a lifelong process because that doesn't sound very hopeful for me. I just think it's going to be years process of like unwinding those things.
what's been your approach to do that?
Uh, Education's empowerment for my brain. When it can learn facts, it's willing to let go of stories because our brains all have stories, right? It's taking information in, it's creating subjective interpretation, it's filtering it through its own belief system. So it's creating all these stories. So my brain is willing to let stories go if I can back up a different belief with facts. So for me,
Okay.
it's always been education. Like, okay, what does like reading the book The Emotionally Absent Mother, like finding like and then internal family systems, like finding the research and the science. So then I can look at these things and be like, oh, okay, yeah, that happened, right? And then doing a lot of nervous system regulation work because a lot of this is stored in my body and it's stored in my nervous system, and I don't necessarily have access to a lot of like memories, but my nervous system does. So I'm doing a lot of like biohacking, like cold plunging, nervous vagus nerve stimulation, and then nervous system regulation work to kind of help retrain my subconscious brain and my nervous system. Like it's safe to be safe.
Right. Um, do you have clients that you feel like you kind of see what happened with you, similar stories? Do you have clients coming in to you with similar stories, or is it more all over the place? Or
I
um,
think. not necessarily similar stories, but similar coping mechanisms. Like, so my coping mechanism was drivenness to prove myself. So I'm very driven, right? I'm very ambitious. I tend to be type A because I want to be in control. Those are just coping mechanisms. And so a lot of my clients, they're entrepreneurs, are coming in, and you can see that same patterning.
And so, how do you approach that?
Um, I do it with directness and compassion. Because I think it's like helpful to just like, if you're not aware, how can I fix it? Right. So
Right.
I think I I tend like we will dive in and I can see pretty clearly like that's like what's going on. And then I just address it. Like that is that drivenness to prove yourself. Like I'm not enough. Like it's never enough. So we have to like overcommit, overplan, overproduce, right? That's coming from that core wound of like, I'm not enough. I'm like, we got to address that and we got to heal the relationship with yourself and your nervous system. Because I don't know if you know this, but 70% of autoimmune diagnoses are women. And there's also a high percentage of women entrepreneurs that are receiving autoimmune diagnoses.
And do you think it's because of what you're finding
Yeah.
with?
It's like chronic stress, this chronic drive to prove ourselves, right? Women have both the the workload of being a worker, for lack of other terms, right? And then we have this social workload that we've been socially programmed to do, like keep a nice house, cook the meals, do the laundry, go grocery shopping, right? So we got these two workloads. And if you're a mom, then that adds on. So it's like this like chronic level of like, I'm not enough. I have to do more. There's not enough time. And I have to prove myself and prove my worth that like sends us straight into burnout.
Um, and so then what, I mean, I don't know, what would be the way to recognize there? Is there usually people that are already burned out that are coming to you? Um, or do you have people that are starting to notice signs of, oh, this is not good, or is it usually too late? And that's the only way you can really find out.
Most of my clients are coming to me they hit that,
Oh, okay.
before they've hit that like end wall, right? Because when you're like at that end wall, like we've already gone through burnout, like you're probably in the system right now, the medical system, because your health is like deteriorated, right? So they're focusing on their health, trying to get their health back. So most of my clients that come to me, it's before that. It's like, I'm not happy. I feel like anxious, right? I'm tired of working all the time. I want to be balanced. I want more for my life. Like, I want to be the creator of my life, right? Instead of just like working all the time or doing this job that I don't like. Because I work with a lot of women that are either wanting to move up in their career, change careers, or start their own business. So they're at
Okay.
that like cusp of like, I know there's something more for me. This can't be like, I can't keep doing this.
And yeah, I mean, that's already like they're already set in that mindset of openness to something new.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a lot
So,
easier to coach.
yeah, as opposed to, and then how much is it to, say that is you, like, with that, I don't know if you're super direct about it or, if you go kind of a different route, but like to say it's you, like, you got to do this, like, no one else can do this for you. Like,
Oh yeah,
you
I'm
got to,
direct. Yeah, like
and
why sugarcoat this stuff? Like,
right. Yeah. And I don't know. I kind of feel I have that too. Like I have to, like, I know people who will sugarcoat it. but like if you're going to work with me, like it's not going to happen. I don't know. There's a million different
There is.
of everything, a million different
Yes,
people that you can work with. And like,
there is.
I mean, I was so turned off by uh, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, anything for so long because I had some and they were just terrible and I didn't get any benefit. But then I found one that I really liked, and then I completely changed my mind about it all. And I was like, well, yeah, I just had shitty ones. Like, and there are shitty ones, and there are ones that aren't going to get me. But then, there'll be ones that are going to get you, and you work with those people, and those are your people. And so, when people want to work with you and want to be your people, how do they do that? How do they find you? How do they work with you?
Yeah. Can I go back and comment on something you said?
Sure, I probably went in three different directions there, but yeah,
No, you're
please.
good.
You will sleep better than you have ever slept. You've never been this relaxed. Are you ready to change your life?
I'm Rusty Diamond, certified hypnotist. You don't need to leave your house. You can stay in your bed. You can stay in your favorite chair. You just need a computer or your phone. You can get a hold of me. Stay at home. I'll make your life better.
Hypnosisisgreat.com.
I appreciate so much, like the more conversations, the more podcasts and more and more real conversations I have with people like you, right? And like sharing like how therapy it wasn't helpful for me, right?
Right,
And I always throw the number, like I finished that world with 8 because science and data matter to me, right? So if I like only had one therapist, that's not that's not fair, right? For me, like, oh, it didn't work for me. I
right.
had one. Well, I had 8. Like, we had a variety here, right? Like,
Yeah,
a pretty good test sample at this point. Um,
yeah,
but what I was saying is like the more conversations I have with people, the more people are being honest with like, you know what? Like, I agree. I tried therapy and it wasn't helpful for me. Or, I had to go through a lot of like terrible therapists, but then I found one and that one really made a difference in my life. Because these conversations, I had never heard them. All I'd ever heard was like, yeah, you go to therapy and it's just like life changing, right? And so here
yeah.
I am going from one to another and like not getting better. And like all that does was tell me, like, you are so broken, you cannot be helped. And this is your fault. Right. And I think
Right.
the
Which
more
is
we have these discussions, the more empowering it is for people to be like, okay, that therapist wasn't helpful for me. And there are terrible therapists, and I can keep trying other ones, or there are other modalities out there that I can find the help I need. But this isn't me, and I'm not, and I'm too broken or something wrong with me. It's just, I haven't found the right fit. And I think these are
right.
super valuable conversations to be having for people.
Same with doctors.
Oh, yeah.
I'll throw
Yeah.
that in there too. Uh, Doctors too. Like there's more than one doctor in the world. You don't have to
Yes.
just go to one doctor. And I mean, there's a lot, and it's all about like it's okay to say no. Like you don't like this person and find a new person. Like, and it's so worth it. And um, yeah, I think that's an
Yeah.
important thing to have to be able to be like, you know, I don't know, because especially like with coaching or with I found more with like a naturopathic and an acupuncture. It's like that's where I found I was able to be like they were gonna help fix the root, and then it felt like a lot more comfortable to be able to tell them what's wrong, like what the actual things were, as opposed to just like, yeah, I don't feel good. Something's not right. Figure it out. But then like, asking me all these different questions that I'd never gotten asked before. And I just like, oh, this is way different. This is great. This is something that's helping me out. And it's working. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
mean,
thousand% agree with you. Like my ex-husband had MS. And then I have struggled with infertility. So when I would take him to the neurologist every year, I I would be like, "Have you heard of the paleo diet? Research shows that paleo is very helpful for people with MS." And he'd be like, "Just eat a balanced diet. And by the way, here are some more prescriptions." And like for three
Right.
years, he did that. And then the fourth year, he was like, "Have you guys heard of the paleo diet?" I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Like,
Yeah.
I've been telling you this for 4 years. And then I had a gynecologist tell me at the beginning of my infertility journey that it was my fault that I couldn't get pregnant because I refused to be on birth control. And so at that point, yeah, yeah, yes,
Wow. Okay.
right. At that
Interesting.
point, I was like, conventional medicine, like, I'm done. I'm done. Like, they are fantastic at emergency medicine, but I'm done with this. I'm tired of being gaslit. I'm tired of being blamed. I'm tired of just doing symptom management. And then that's where I went off into the like holistic health, functional medicine, and then found Dr. Carmen, who's a licensed naturopathic doctor. And it's been it's been life-changing. Like for me, I'll tell you part of my story. Like I'd said at the beginning of COVID, I was like, fine, like my immune system will handle this, right?
Right.
Well, then we hit 2021 and I get COVID. My whole family, my one of my family members brought it to Christmas. I won't name
Okay.
who. And 8 of the 12 of us got it, right? And I was so sick. I'm the healthiest person in the family. And I was so sick. And it took me forever, like 6 months to get over it. And like I was still CrossFitting and I couldn't really CrossFit much anymore. And then I got it again, December. And like my recovery was slower. And then I got it again.
Oh,
And that was October of 2022. I told you I had two coping mechanisms, right? First was
yeah.
religion, lost it. Second was CrossFit. Well, long COVID took CrossFit away from me in October of 2022. And I have not been able to exercise since then. And that was like a major part of my identity. And like I am just now starting to like be able to like think about going back and working out. And we're what, 2 years post. But if I hadn't had Dr. Carmen, who's the licensed naturopathic doctor,
Yeah.
I would have to live with this for the rest of my life. Because I went to a cardiologist and I went to a rheumatologist and they're just like, meh, right? And like her and I have dug and dug and dug and dug. And it's like, okay, so they're finding that with COVID, it activates the cell danger response, which is part of the nervous system, right? And like that's what's happened to me. And like I'm having to like reverse that to get my body and my immune system back into like a regulated place so I can have my health back and I can go back to being an active human. So yeah, I'm totally with
Yeah.
you on the doctors.
Excellent. Okay. And so how do they find you? How do people
Yeah.
find you?
Sorry,
How
to
do,
answer your question.
nope, I needed that. I needed that last part in there. So that worked out well.
Okay. Um, so you can find me on my website, Kimberly Jarman Coaching, or you can find me on Instagram, Kimberly Jarman Coaching, or TikTok, Kimberly Jarman.
Ooh,
Just
what do you do on
like
TikTok? I like
videos.
asking people who are over 30
Yeah.
what they do on TikTok.
I do not dance.
Okay.
Do not dance.
That
I
was my
don't
first
sing.
question.
Yeah. I do more
Second,
like informational videos because I love
cool.
learning and I learn a lot on TikTok. So
Me too.
yeah.
TikTok gets a lot of shit for being, oh, it's just people dancing and singing. It's like, no, like, well, if that's what you're into, then that's what it's gonna be. If you're into watching people dance and lip sync to shit, like that's what it's gonna show you. But if you're into learning all kinds of different things and getting information that's coming out right away, like TikTok is awesome.
Yeah, I totally
TikTok,
agree with you.
there's yeah,
Yeah.
there's a bunch. It's more
Yeah.
than singing and dancing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love
yeah,
TikTok. That's where people are at. So TikTok, Instagram, and my Facebook. And then I do a free like consultation call, like, because I just want to get to know you and I want you to get to know me because who I am on this show right now is who I am. Like, and people either like it or I'm not the right person for them. So I like to do a free intro call just to like do our personalities mesh because it's a 6 month commitment to work with me.
Yeah.
That's a long time
Cool.
if we don't
Yeah.
enjoy each other.
Right. And that's kind of why I like doing this show. Like it's hard to explain to people, but then at the end, I feel like, you can get a better feel of who the person is because I mean, I've been on a lot of different podcasts where, you can tell a story and it's one thing, but like, getting to, the root causes of things and, who people are or at a deeper level than very surface level conversation, I think we can, yeah, either get people to like really be with you. And if they're not, then they're not your people. And then you save them that time and like
Yeah.
they have their people, then it's fine.
Yeah.
Everyone has their people and
Yeah.
like, and it's good to have that consultation call because like even with this show, for a long time I did I would be like, hey, you sound okay. Let's go. And we'll just hit record and start. But then I ended up with one person that I had to end the call. And
Wow.
I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start doing like a 5 minute thing just to see if I can like get a good, feel this person real quick. And as opposed to just going in and then be like, oh shit, like I don't want to put this person out to my
Yes.
people listening, like, yeah, that person, like, nope, not worth it for me. I don't want to put my stamp of approval on them.
Yeah.
So like that's
Yeah.
it. And so it's good to have a little bit of a thing just to be able to feel people out and you can either move
Yeah.
on or you can work with them. And so
Yes.
yeah, so
Yeah, I totally
yeah,
agree. And I feel honored that you like we're still recording. What we're like
yeah,
51 minutes in and you haven't been like, oh, we're done.
yeah, yeah. It's not a 15-minute one where I'm still trying to ask other questions and sitting there for a while. Shit, like looking at the clock every minute or so, and I didn't have to do that. So thank you for that. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
did a podcast one time. Can I tell you this? Oh my gosh.
please,
The
yeah.
lesson learned for me. Uh, she was like, okay, like, and before we started, we had like these check things, like, and she kept telling me, like, we do editing, and so we'll cut things out when you mess up. And she wanted me to send her questions before a time, ahead of time, right? I
Oh,
didn't know,
oh,
Rusty. You know now. I can tell
yeah.
you, I know where you're going. I didn't. And I was like, okay. So I get on there and she asked me a question and I'm like trying to answer it. And she stops me and she's like, we're going to edit this, but this is your question. You should know the answer to it. And I was like, um, that wasn't my question. Somehow you changed my question to a different question. But okay, I will
Whoa.
try to answer that question. It was the
Yeah.
most painful interview ever. And from there on out, I'm like, nope. If you make me submit you questions ahead of time, we are not a fit. Like, I'm not doing it.
Right. And I kind of do the same thing. If people submit me questions ahead of time, I won't do the show. Like I don't. I'm like, no, no, I don't want that. I don't need that. Like you can do it, but like that's not what this is going to be about. If this is what you're expecting, like
Yes.
I have not had one question ever written down for a guest in this year 588 or 589 or something like that. Like never once have I written down a question for a guest because yeah, it's just it doesn't lead to much good from it. Like it's not I don't know, but it is for some podcasts that's like what's good. Like if it's set up for a good, PR run of something, it can be great. Like, please ask me about that. But then it can be anyone to ask those questions. Like, it doesn't have to be, some, I don't know, it can be anyone that can ask those questions. There's not really any depth to those questions. They're just
So, and it
there.
doesn't
And
lead
then,
to organic conversation. Like,
right. Yeah. Yeah. You don't get the, like, oh, well, we're talking about this. And then, okay, well, so,
yeah.
let's go back to question number six. And question number six is something totally different. And
Right.
you're going to, especially, and then having to, answer it and then say, no, we're going to edit that out. Let's try this again. Like when you try to do that the second time, like you're going to already kind of have your guard up and you're not going to get
Yes.
as
Yeah.
good of an answer then. Like you're not going to get a better answer
Yeah.
once your guard's up. Like who the fuck is this person? Like who do they think they are? Like so if you
Yeah.
go back, you find that podcast, I guess you'll probably
No, I
figure
never.
that out.
I moved on. I was like, I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not like, we're
Yeah,
done.
it's probably a good idea.
I am a 43-year-old woman. I do not need someone else getting on to me for not answering properly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's easy to just be like, okay, I'm good. Like I'm good on you for staying to the end of that one,
I was an
and
idiot.
making
I
it
should have
through.
been like, I think I'm done.
Yeah. It's kind of a nice thing that you can get to when you get to that. And I wish I would have done it maybe one or two times before,
Yeah.
but getting to that point is kind of nice and it's
Yeah.
kind of liberating.
Yes.
So yeah, I hope you do and do not get that in your life. Because yeah, I hope you do get to the point where you could
Oh
say
yeah.
that you
Yeah.
have the ability to do it now, not that
Yes.
you have to do it
Yes.
because someone does that for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for being on. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, probably have you on again if you like sometime in the future.
Sure.
And cool. All
Yeah.
right. Well, then I hope you have a great rest of your day and we'll stay in touch then.
Okay. You too. Take care.
All
Thank
right.
you
You
again.
too. You bet. All right. All right. That's Kimberly Jarman. So hit her up, find her. Uh, yeah, find me, rustydiamond.net, hypnosisisgreat.com. I don't care. You can find me. It's real easy to find me. Just that Rusty Diamond, then a CH for cool human. That's what it stands for. So thank you everyone for being here on the Rusty Diamond Podcast Network. That is the show, man. Boom!
It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker. It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker.